Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Wednesday, April 16th, 2025, and today we're talking soil health on a budget, tips for how to remember to keep some dang records, and calculating how much water you need for a market garden. So let's do it. All right, y'all. Well, welcome to Wednesday and the day clearly named before autocorrect. I got a little more planting done yesterday and finished some tax stuff, which is definitely the most fun part of farming. Got to hang out with the family a lot yesterday, watched some Champions League football, and then watched Lou City in the US Open Cup. All good stuff. It's been a relatively productive week on the farm, and I got some surprise strawberries that I'd forgotten I'd ordered in the mail, so that's good times. On the farm news front, I saw this week that the USDA officially canceled the Climate Smart grants. That is, they canceled contracts that were already awarded and signed wildly. I know several really good people who are losing important and farm supporting jobs from this. I know several good farm projects that will be ended because of it. The press release, as hard as it is to read for all the bizarre and tantalizing propaganda they throw in there, suggests that some people will still be reimbursed for a quote-unquote approved expenses incurred, whatever that means, and there is a chance to reapply. But I'm not sure why anyone would trust this USDA enough to bother after canceling existing contracts, which was probably, at least in part, the point. I'm totally fine with the USDA going in a new direction. That's just how things work with new leaders. It's expected, but canceling existing contracts is just unforgivable and sets a dangerous precedent. Just a huge blow for farmers and the farm organizations we rely on. My heart goes out to all the farmers and farm organizations this will affect and hurt. Anyway, changing gears pretty much entirely, I am getting behind on my Patreon questions. So for the next 2 days, we are going to take those questions because, well, April is a big question month, and I still have some questions from February and March to catch up on. So our first Patreon question of the day comes from Patreon member Adam Kinney, who writes, quote, found your YouTube channel this winter and have been binge watching. Really appreciate the content. I have been home gardening for 20 plus years, but using traditional tillage models. The last few years, I have mixed my soil with some bagged quote-unquote garden soil in the area where I plant my seedlings, and this works but doesn't help the surrounding soil. I'd love to start this spring with no-till, but buying enough compost for several inches deep, even with my small 30 by 60 garden, would be a large upfront cost. I'm considering buying enough compost to start my early season bed and starting a cover crop in the entire spring/summer bed, foregoing the summer crop, to start work on soil health. I will also start making compost. We have chickens and plenty of other green/brown material to hopefully make enough compost for late summer or early spring planting. With a small budget in mind, does this seem like the best way to get started? What cover crop would you recommend? I have some clay, so I was thinking tillage radish mixed in with something else would be a good start. Any help would be great. End quote. All right, thank you for the kind words and for this great question here, Adam. So it's kind of a soil health on a budget question or a going no-till on a budget question, and I love that. Basically, it sounds like you can get a small amount of compost and you're wondering how to maximize that for those sort of summer beds that you described. I think first off, that your instinct to use cover crops in conjunction with the compost is a really good one. Either work that compost into the soil, at least, the top couple inches, or layer it directly onto the surface if the soil is already plantable. Also consider at this time adding maybe some inoculated biochar if you can get your hands on it for a reasonable price to help retain nutrients and add a little microbial habitat in the process. This may also be a good time to send in a soil test and see what, if anything, the soil really is missing out on, and add some of that now at this stage before you kind of stop any sort of tillage. Then you can sow the cover crop into that sort of preparation and wait until the fall to plant it or plant it to another cover crop or whatever you want to do. Now for the spring, I'm not generally going to recommend tillage radish. It can be a little hard to get rid of in the summer and does its best work over the winter, as it will grow and die on its own in many climates. Like you plant it in the fall, you let those tillage radishes, those daikons, get pretty big, and then they just kind of die and rot over the winter, and that sort of opens up the soil for you. For you, if you want to plant cover crops into that ground in the fall, consider a succession of cover crops that are easier to terminate, such as field peas or beans, along with perhaps sunflowers and lacy phacelia. Grow those out, terminate them, do a solo round of buckwheat after that, and that should get you most of the way through the summer and really enrich that soil for perhaps a fall garden, for an August planting of fall crops. If you are not worried about planting until next spring, then sorghum Sudan grass is going to be a good hard worker for you all summer, and then you can switch to a winter cover crop or winter kill cover crop later in the fall. I talked about spring cover crops a few weeks ago, so have a listen to that. But one of the nice things about sorghum Sudan grass is it is a good weed suppressant, and it grows fast, and you can mow it really high up to maximize that soil building quality that it has, as the roots will basically just like die back when you mow it, and then that kind of produces that soil, creates soil organic matter. Cover crops to me are the ultimate in low budget soil improvement because, at least for the moment, seeds are relatively affordable. I also like things like kelp for micronutrients and biochar because although the upfront price tag can seem high, a little bit goes a really long way. As always, there are a million ways to build soil health, but few things do it better than just cover crops and a little compost. Anyway, I hope that was helpful, and best of luck on the garden this year and in transitioning to some no or low tillage methods. I think taking your time to convert some of that soil, especially using cover crops, is the absolute right way to go. If you have the time, time is its own soil amendment, so definitely endorse that. Otherwise, up next, we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're recording. BRB.
Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. I started a CSA to grow food and build community, not to drown in admin work. Spreadsheets, emails, and pack lists take up too much time. If I could spend less time at my desk and more in the field, that'd be a win. Enter Farmhand. Farmhand automates billing, newsletters, websites, and member support, saving CSA farmers 20 plus hours a week. Focus on farming, not paperwork. See how Farmhand can help. Book a one-on-one demo with founder Ari at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show.
If you, the listener, are enjoying this content, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's second Patreon question comes from Patreon member Chris Miller, who writes, quote, "Hey Jesse, been following for about 4 years now, and your early videos changed my life. I was living in a not so great place in my world and stumbled across your videos. I started a small garden that year, 10 by 10 feet, and fell in love. Using family land, I graduated to about a quarter acre as a family garden. Year 2, I started selling at a local market and have been gaining speed ever since. Now I've expanded to just under 1 acre and no-till. The challenges never end, but I can't think of a better life. I'm broke as a joke, but able to support my family and feed the others in my community. I owe a lot of it to you, Jesse. Thank you for your inspiration and influence. The world needs more people like you. My question for you is, how do you combat the fun and flow state of working to remember to hit the record button? I get caught up in the task and forget to record for media constantly," end quote. Okay, well, first, obviously, thank you for the kind words. I just can't say enough about how glad I am that our work can be helpful to you. I'm really proud that you've gone from 10 by 10 feet up to nearly an acre. That's super amazing. So congrats to you. That's super cool. As for your question about remembering to hit the record button, very interesting question, because I've never really thought about it. I guess it just depends a little on what your goals are. What do you want to record and why? Also, are you talking about a literal record button like on a phone or camera, or a proverbial record button like a spreadsheet to keep track of your production records? I'm assuming you mean more of the former, but I'll talk about both. Part of the reason I find this to be an interesting question, like I said, is that I've never really thought about how I personally do this. But that is a thing. I will frequently find myself just plowing through a task. Kind of a funny verb there for this show, but anyway, plowing through a task before I realize, hey, this might be something people would want to see how it's done, because obviously I make educational content, so it's good to record as much as I can of what I'm actually doing. For me, I guess the way I accomplish it is a few different ways. First, I have a camera on me at all times. I mean, most of us do these days, thanks to cell phones, but I always have my cell phone and often my GoPro in my pocket. Almost all of the time. That way, if I'm doing something that I think might be helpful or useful at some point, I can just pull the camera out of my pocket, set it up, hit record, and work away. Honestly, I probably forget to stop recording as often as I forget to just record. An example of like just pulling the camera out and starting to record was like the other day when I was interplanting some romaine into the potatoes. I thought to myself, maybe I should record this in case I later want to talk about how it went or how much it failed or something. I stopped planting for a second, pulled the GoPro out, and just showed what that task looked like from my vantage, then put it back in my pocket and just kept rolling and listening to the Modern Soccer Coaching Podcast, which is amazing, by the way. I also think one thing that helped me a lot in remembering to record things is not worrying about, getting the perfect shot. People often just want to see the action and are willing to deal with some meh videography so long as they can see roughly what I'm doing. The better and more clear the image, obviously, the more helpful, but I think they'd rather see it than not see it. So I don't often haul this camera out to the garden like I used to. That honestly was a huge chore with the tripod and getting the exposure right and making sure I had the right lens. And it took up a lot of my farming time. Now, a cell phone or a GoPro shot is my go-to, unless I want a shot that those two tools can't achieve or need some really high-quality video for some reason. I can't imagine that reason anymore, but maybe it happens sometimes. Also, I generally know what I want to film and what I have enough footage of. Like, I have 1 million hours of soil blocking footage and photos of carrots. I'm good on those fronts. But some things like celery, I didn't have a lot of footage for that. So as I'm growing celery this year, I plan to take a lot of footage of it. I also think if you do a task and you think, oh, that would have been super helpful to show people, it's also okay to just demo it in front of the camera and then show the end result. I mean, more often than not, that's going to be the most helpful thing anyway to people who are watching it. If you're trying to do educational content, here's how it's done. Here's what it should look like in the end, etc. As for recording to spreadsheets, which I also think is important, I have a rule where a task is not completed and marked off the list until I have recorded it in the spreadsheet or whatever document you use to record your planting and harvesting and amending records. Now, I will wait until I've seeded all the trays that I'm going to seed that day before I get my phone out and record those details. I'm not just going to do it tray by tray because that would take forever. But if I plant a bed or two of lettuce, for instance, as soon as I'm done, it goes in the spreadsheet so I don't forget to put it in there. In that way, a huge part of record keeping is about building a habit around it, building it into the work, so to speak. In fact, I think I've never really thought about that with content, but it could be the same thing. A task cannot be marked as complete until a picture or video clip is taken of the details and the details are recorded. I know I'm kind of coming up with this content addition here on the fly, but that's actually not the worst idea. If you can incorporate that piece of footage into your crop tracking documents somehow as well, that would be, as the emojis say, fire. Anyway, I hope that's at least a little bit helpful. And thank you again for the kind words about our work. We work very hard on it, and it's very cool to hear how and when we've made an impact. And the team will be very proud. So thank you. Best of luck on your garden this year. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll talk about how much water you need. Be right back. Today's episode is also brought to you by FarmRaise. Still using QuickBooks for your farm's bookkeeping? You're wasting time and losing money. Farm finances can be overwhelming, but they don't have to be. FarmRaise Tracks is the all-in-one tool built just for farmers. Manage expenses, prep for taxes, run payroll, and plan for the future without spreadsheets or stress. Just clear, organized insights to keep your operation thriving. Thousands of farmers trust Tracks to make smart financial decisions all year long. It's time you did too. Use code NOTIL20, that's all caps, no spaces, NOTIL20 for 20% off the life of your membership at farmraise.com. All right, back to the show. All right, our third, final Patreon question of the day comes to us from Jakers Acres, who writes, quote, "Hey, Jesse, I am in the early stages of starting my farm. I need help with figuring out how much water the operation will need. My current vision is to use a tapped spring and a solar pump to fill a tank on top of the ridge, about 600 feet of elevation. Then I could gravity feed irrigation, livestock waters, pack shed, and domestic use. Sounds like a large task for one spring, but just curious how I would get some rough numbers of gallons needed for these tasks. We want to start a market garden and we'll design uniform beds, 50 feet long, 30-inch wide, blocks of 12 beds. 3 rows of drip tape per bed worked well for me in the past, but I do not remember which product we used. What drip tape emitter spacing, gallons per minute, do you recommend? I am sure it varies, but do you have any guesses on how many gallons your pack shed uses in a day? What is the maximum water needed per bed for different crops? Just looking for rough estimates at this point. Thanks." End quote. All right, Jakers Acres, this is a tall task, but I am game for it. Love it. So as you suggest here, it would be hard for me to say exactly how much water you would need in total, especially if you're including home use and livestock on the same water source. If you're talking about cattle in terms of livestock, for instance, each head can drink like 10 or more gallons of water per day, and that's if they are not lactating. Now, not to mention that they will often, all the cattle will attack the water tank at the same time in the morning or on hot days in the afternoon after they get up out of the shade, draining it rapidly. But anyway, maybe I can help with some rough estimates for you. Note that the gross number of gallons per minute, or even the average number of gallons per minute that you will need, can change based on the day. So for instance, on hot wash pack days, you may also need some irrigation, which means that you will need to calculate for the max number of possible gallons per minute at any one time for your tank capacity, not the number of them running individually. Again, this is especially true if livestock are in the mix. They could hammer all of your water on a summer day and you'd have nothing for washing or irrigating. Also, are you in a super dry climate like California, where you have to irrigate absolutely everything every day, multiple times? That has to be taken into consideration as well. For us, we can use water more sparingly because we get it from the sky sometimes, more often than you all do. And sometimes in a week we get, more than, say, Southern California gets an entire year. For some numbers, though, on a day where we are doing 100 pounds of lettuce plus some other crops, we are using roughly 60 to 100 gallons of water on a wash day in the wash pack station. Especially if you have dirty carrots and root veggies, we will use more water than normal. It just depends on how much we're washing. Now, to be clear, I've never measured exactly how much water comes through our carrots wash station, our root wash station, which I'm going to talk about more tomorrow, but I know how deep our wash tanks are. So the numbers I mentioned there are probably pretty close. So let's just set that number aside for a second. On the irrigation side, your soil conditions will also determine a bit about how you use your irrigation in the garden, and you can look into things like pulse watering to reduce the amount of water you're using, but each drip product will tell you how much water it uses per minute, called flow rate. And you can choose high flow rate or low flow rate for many products. So you could choose the high flow rate drip tape or the low flow rate drip tape, etc. Talking numbers on a podcast is incredibly exciting stuff to listen to, but bear with me for just a second. Let's say you use 8-inch emitters and that particular product has a flow rate of 0.34 gallons per minute per line per 100 feet at 8 PSI. So you would say half of that for your 50-foot beds. That means for 3 lines, you are using a half gallon of water per minute per bed. So 10 beds would need roughly 5 gallons per minute, which I think is an easy enough number to work with. And let's say you were doing pulse watering to conserve water, running it for like 5 minutes every hour. That means that you would be using roughly 25 gallons per 10 beds for each pulse, and doing that 5 times in a morning. So, and I know you are enjoying these numbers, you all. Wait for the grand finale. For a morning from 8 to noon, running it 5 times, you would use 125 gallons. Ta-da! Okay, so to get away from the numbness for a second, basically you'd want at least to be able to deliver 125 gallons to the gardens and 100 gallons to the wash pack on a harvest and wash day in the morning from your tank. So 225 total, not including livestock or home water, which isn't bad. Now, if you are not pulse watering, that's a different story because you would be running those lines for an hour or more, whatever whatever they need. Pulse watering is nice because it can cover for most crops. Fruiting crops, for instance, are going to require more water than, say, like leafy greens. Anyway, that could get into much higher numbers if you're running them for these drip lines for much longer. But you can do the math yourself if you know what the gallons per minute rate is. And also drip tapes give you a gallons per hour rating as well, just when you order them. And I like the 8-inch emitters just for good coverage of the entire bed. You really want to cover the whole bed. It's not watering the crop, it's watering the bed, right? You want to make sure that the whole bed is covered, and that way you can really create a good habitat for the microbial life in the soil, all around the soil, not just right where the plants are. And I mean, honestly, the reality is it's all just math. But the big thing is not to just think about what you will need as if these systems won't occasionally be running all together at the same time. Plan for more than you will need or that you could envision needing so you are assured to have enough. And also plan to have a good system for monitoring the pump should you wake up to find that it failed on a harvest day to fill your tank and you don't have any water. That would be terrible. Having a backup is not the worst idea. Was that helpful at all? I hope so. I will also link a good resource that really simplifies these things, these numbers, in understanding like irrigation numbers in the show notes from the University of Kentucky Ag Department. Go Cats. Feel free to check my math and let me know anything that I'm not thinking of here. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it there, but first, a quick word from our friends at Rimmel Greenhouses. Whether you're growing tomatoes for market, flowers in the spring, or vegetables for your family, growing in a high tunnel protected from the weather provides the right environment for a harvest you can count on. Rimmel Greenhouses are strong, durable, and easy to assemble, offering the quality you need to grow productively year-round. The team of experts at Rimmel Greenhouse Systems will be your trusted partners to ensure you get exceptional value from your greenhouse or high tunnel investment. Visit Rimmel.com today to get growing. Don't forget, we at No-Till Growers are now officially a 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you are getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No-Till Growers. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. I think I just called it music. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook or the Seed Farmer at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or sign up in the month of April, you get a shout out in the show. So big shout outs today to, who we got? Oh, it's our earthworms from last month. Home, Stephen Holmes, Judy Swafford, Joanne Fisher, Loke Nielsen, Danny Casillas, Carson Christian, Gasper Mestas, New Moon Rising Farm, William Curry, Martin Komaru, and Matthew Dickens. So the first thing you notice when you bite into an energy potato is that it is pretty starchy and kind of weirdly acidic. It requires a pretty good amount of butter and some good salt, but luckily there was some in this particular office. But the next day, the next thing you notice is that everything around you starts to go in slow motion. And for what seems like an eternity, but it's actually more like a minute, per forkful or somewhere around that ratio, everything slows down around you. You suddenly realize that things aren't really slowing down. It's you who are moving fast. The energy potato is to the body what like nitrous oxide is to the car engine, and you just start going faster than everything else around you. After that, this crew of nerdy misfits can't wait to break into the storage facility and get their hands on some more. Because like if a spoonful does that, what does a whole baked potato on your own do? That's next time on Potato Power. All right, thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you tomorrow. For what is today? Wednesday? Tomorrow's probably going to be Thursday. We'll see you though. Bye.